Hi.
Everyone, are we admitting? We are now recording. Welcome to Bringing the World Back Home, how the Peace Corps changed how I live and see the world. I'm Lisa Martin with Silver Spring Town Center. So happy to have you here celebrating Peace Corps Day. Yay, with my fellow RPCVs. We have an awesome array of folks representing all corners of the globe. We have Rhett representing Uzbekistan, Jennifer, Mali, Melissa, Benin, T. Fox serving Zambia, and Eswatini response in Eswatini. She'll tell us a little about that. Ana Marina, and also known as Anne, was in Mexico, more recently in Mexico, and she's an old friend of mine. Another couple of old friends of mine are Jay and Sharon Levy, who served in Brazil. And speaking of Brazil, Rhett is actually in Brazil right now.
I am indeed.
Wow.
Brazil was the country that I gravitated to after serving between the Arctic and Siberian winds in Estonia. And I've been there about half a dozen times. I love Brazil. And Ursula, who served in Costa Rica. And then our awesome hostess with the mostest, Frances Holiday Alford, Korea, RPCV. So Frances will be moderating this what's bound to be a fascinating discussion. But before we get started, I just want to tell you about a couple other things we have coming up. It's Peace Corps 60th anniversary. The Peace Corps Museum is launching on Wednesday. Check out their website. There's an array of other Peace Corps events going on. Check out peacecorps.gov and also Peace Corps Connect, the National Peace Corps Association's website, to find out about more events. And also RPCVW. I was president of that so many years ago. So I think almost everyone is local. I think all of our panelists are local except for our hostess Frances, who is coming to us from Vermont. In addition to our program today, SSTCI, as you know, is a small nonprofit based in the Silver Spring Civic Building, and we present over 100 free arts and entertainment programs and events throughout the year, including the Silver Spring Blues Festival, outdoor performances, an array of other things. But we're completely virtual now. We're doing even more, and we're able to include people here, including my mom, Barbara.
Latin America.
If you're going to be chatting, then please mute yourself. We are recording this too, by the way. My mom, Barbara, has joined us from San Diego, I see. But we've got a lot of people, over 50 people on the call. So our theme this month is Deep Beauty. Our newsletter just hit today, and it's inspired by a book, Deep Beauty, Experiencing Wonder When the World is on Fire. And we will be hosting writers and editors from that book on Thursday, March 25th. We also have several events in honor of Women's History Month, including our Women in the Arts panel, our annual Women in the Arts panel, which will be on Friday, March 12th. And we're doing a senior one now, honoring our elders from the creative spectrum through our Sparkle program, Sparkle Senior Women in the Arts, on March 10th. And we also have a new trio of comedy shows starting up on March 11th. Superhero Comics, hosted by Wayne Manigo, and many other exciting things going on. All of our events are made possible with generous support from Montgomery County, United Therapeutics, the Arts and Humanities of Montgomery County, Maryland State Arts, Montgomery College, and many others. And I want everyone to feel like you can contribute in the chat. We will have time at the end for questions, hopefully, or for comments too, to share about your own service. But until then, please use the chat. Tell us where you served and when, what you did. And now I will turn the mic over to my dear friend, Frances Holiday. Alfred, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. And happy birthday, Peace Corps. Isn't this exciting? Some of us can remember the first year that it started. And I see from a few faces here that some of you can't remember that. But anyway, this is a real treat to be able to do this. And Lisa and I talked about how we would do this, and we thought we'd start with the panel and ask each person to tell us where you served, and then tell us what you brought home with you that was special or sort of a surprise or something that you wouldn't have done before. So who are we going to start with, Lisa?
Right, yeah, what custom or tradition
Yeah,
did
custom,
you bring home?
custom or tradition.
Yeah.
What did you bring back with you? And
Okay, yeah, I can start. I can start just to get myself out of the way and do the admin stuff.
Let's
behind
ask
the
Lisa
scenes.
then.
So I served in Estonia at the age of 29, 96 to 98, and I was an English teacher in a village of 1,500, just 10 kilometers outside of the medieval capital of Tallinn. So I always joke that it was between the Arctic and Siberian winds. I grew up with lemon and orange trees in my front yard, right on the border of Mexico and San Diego, the southernmost beach town. Imperial Beach is where I'm from. And I never imagined I'd live in such a cold, dark place. And boy, was it. We had electricity, running water, and enough modern conveniences, but it was much more challenging because of how cold it was, cold and dark in many ways. Also, you know, having come out of the Soviet Union, we were the first Americans really to be there. So it was a very isolated experience at the time. And I was placed in a chicken factory village called Lo, which looks like Lou, which looks like Lou, like a toilet, but L-O-O, but it's pronounced Lo. And it was kind of a more rough and tumble kind of place compared to the other villages or the other assignments that my fellow RPCVs. There were only, I think, 17 of us, and then I think 4 went home during training, something like this. And I had a special project on arts festivals for students, and also on the International Anthropology and Documentary Film Festival. Because I had worked in the arts before. I'd worked for San Diego Opera. I brought 3 opera gowns to Peace Corps. It was not a typical Peace Corps experience. And I did not want to get put into a rural area. And I told them so. I said, look, I brought 3 opera gowns, and I want to be able to attend events in the capital, you know, classical music or, you know, arts and cultural programs. And I was able to do that. And I think I was well matched, but I was probably given the toughest because we had kind of, it was the Estonian mafia was in my town, and we had skinheads and things like scary stuff like that. But I was probably the most gritty of my fellow RPCVs in Estonia. So when they started harassing me, I managed to handle that. But a tradition, but I love Estonia. I sing in the Estonian choir for like over 10 years, and I go back every 5 years to sing in their large Laulupidu song festival, wearing traditional clothing. There's over 33,000 singers on stage at once. So that's one tradition I brought back, and as well as, of course, going to sauna, but I did that even before. So I feel like I was so well matched for Estonia. And now I'll call on one of my other RPCV friends here to tell us about their experience. How about T? How about you tell us about your assignment in Zambia?
Mabugabuti.
Hi,
Tonga
T.
was the language that I was given. Hey, everyone. And I barely passed. That was one of my worst memories, was praying my way through language, because I went in as a Peace Corps volunteer at the age of 48. So I was the elder in my group. And but at the same time, I called the younger people my Peace Corps kids, and some of them, quite a few, are still in my heart. I relocated San Diego as well, Lisa. Born and raised, off of Euclid and Imperial Avenue, went to Point Loma High School and graduated from USD with my master's. So my home away from home. Now I'm relocated in Silver Springs. I saw someone mention that they're here. I'm living with my firstborn daughter. I was a community health improvement program chipper in Zambia. My background is public health, but it's not with an MPH. It's from an actual more of a grassroots. I created my own program called Sex, Drugs, and Hip Hop, which I still do, where I look at not just teen pregnancy prevention, but also having that courageous and uncomfortable conversation. But I do it in such a way that I incorporate music, spoken word, as well as the arts. And I've been able to do that in Zambia. And then in 2019 to 2020, I became a response volunteer in Eswatini. So I just got back January 2020 well, February, because I spent another month traveling. And this time I went with my nonprofit hat on as a infrastructure assessor for Girls Leading Our World. Anybody familiar with GLOW? Yes. So with Eswatini's Glow Ladies, I worked with them, and they were trying to decide if they wanted to be a standalone NGO. And I spent a year with them, giving them as they told me, you were so mean, because of that whole year, you guys, I didn't apply for a grant. If they wanted money, they had to get their own. And I said, this is how a nonprofit works. You have to go out and get your own funding before you're able to start getting it from other people. And at the end, who knew that COVID was going to happen? And so they had no more Peace Corps money, but were able to keep moving forward. And they're now called Eswatini Glow, EGLO. And I taught them to step up, and Peace Corps would step back. And so let me think, what else did I do? My goodness, when I lived in Zambia, I was there for the 2 years. I lived in a rural village community where there was no running water, no electricity. I had a pit latrine. And as you saw in that picture of me, I used those charcoal burners as my stove and so we were very rural, to the point of I still today have that. I still have my Peace Corps solar lamp, which I still use here in America. And so that's one of those traditions that, who knew, oops, sorry, that, sorry, somebody's letting me know I'm messing with their meeting, that I would bring back with me. Another thing that I brought back with me is, hold on, I'm gonna turn this off. What I saw in Zambia in particular, I'm 5K from the tarmac, no electricity, no running water, watching nurses who would deliver babies using lamps. Women walking at 2, 3 in the morning, coming in, bringing all the stuff with them. So I don't take anything for granted anymore. Imagine, these are women. I've given birth to 4 children. And you know, in America, you go every month and then eventually every week at the end. These women might have gone twice to see a midwife, and then they may deliver at home or they may make it there. And so, and they had to bring their own food. They have to bring their own washing. They had to bring the stuff for not just for the baby, but for the mom while she was there. And so, what that taught me, and I still do it today, is I don't take anything for granted, and I've learned to recycle. And I'll tell you that story later. I'm gonna pick someone. I'm picking Rhett.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Were we popcorning, right? Cool.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting that you did that. And we all came home with traditions. Lisa, who do you want me to call on next?
Oh, I think T called on Rhett.
Oh, T. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm out of step here. Okay.
And
Rex,
then be sure
Rhett,
you
T
give,
wants you to talk.
someone should
What?
also be sure to call on our moderator too. Frances should also share about her experience.
Okay, if
Let's
Rhett
not
calls
forget
on me,
that.
I'll talk.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Thank you,
So
guys.
Rhett, tell us about Uzbekistan.
Well, I'll say this: I had no idea where it was. When my wife and I went to the Peace Corps recruiter, we did this when I was 30. I was a radio executive. My wife was a school teacher, and we went to the Peace Corps recruiter. We were thinking that we needed to change things up in our lives, and he assured us that we would go to Nepal, and that we somehow, for some reason, thought Nepal would be romantic and ideal, and it would be a fit for us. And so we were happy as we could be that we were going to on our way to Peace Corps in Nepal. So the shock when the letter came that it said Uzbekistan was a shock. But it was interesting, you know, the stars kind of aligned as we started looking at Uzbekistan. My wife called her mom, and her mom's was a well-known rug and antique dealer. And she said, "Oh my God, Uzbekistan, that's on the Silk Road. They have wonderful carpets. We have one in our house, by the way." And then I put out a bulletin at the university in our town, and there was a student from Uzbekistan who we went to coffee with, and a grad student. And then when we went to sell our car, we sold it to an incoming grad student from Uzbekistan. And I remember about 3 or 4 weeks before we left, I was going to buy some duffel bags, and the guy in the luggage store kept hassling me and said, what do you need it for? Where are you going? And I said, well, we're going to Peace Corps. He said, Peace Corps, where are you going? And I said, we're going to Uzbekistan. And he said, well, my grandson's in Uzbekistan now in Peace Corps. So Peace Corps, Uzbekistan was where we were supposed to go. And so the question is, what custom did I bring back? And the funny one is, I was a teacher at a university, and routinely, at least once or twice a week, the dean would come in and open a bottle of vodka, and it would have to be consumed. Well, I didn't really want to drink vodka before I had to go teach 2 classes. So that wasn't when I really got home, but you all learn your lessons in Peace Corps with some of the local customs. That was one of the lessons I learned, was not to fall trap to the vodka in the middle of the day at the university. Although that would have probably made my marketing classes pretty interesting. But what I did bring back, and this was really special for us, was a family. In our training, when we went to site, we were supposed to live with a family for 3 months. And we ended up staying with that family the whole time through our service. And so I was an only child. My wife had brothers and sisters, but I inherited 2 brothers and 3 sisters. And so I brought back from Peace Corps a whole family. In fact, our host mother came back when my 2 children were born. She came to the United States and stayed with us. 3 of the daughters are now here in the US. But it was I brought back a family from Peace Corps. So that was what I brought back.
That's
And
a pretty special thing to bring back.
yes, it was. It was pretty remarkable, still is. I mean, um, we love them just like they're part of the family. Well, they are part of the family. So we've been there with them through tough times and joyous times. And it's for me, having two younger brothers is pretty cool, and a sister that's my age and two older sisters. So um, that's pretty neat. I'm going to call on Anne.
Hi, Anna.
Hello, mucho gusto, bienvenidos todos.
Gracias.
De nada. Well, I brought back
Nay.
the language.
What
That's for
so?
I brought back the language, that's for sure. So I served in Mexico from 2010 to 2013, and I, like T, was a mid 40s Peace Corps volunteer. When I was 20 and just graduating college, I was already married. I was in a very early marriage, so I couldn't go to the Peace Corps. And by the time I was in my mid 40s, I was free, and I was highly influenced by several friends who had inspired me to shake things up in my life. So I run and ran my own business called See Change, as in visualize change. So my aspiration as in mid career, the peak of my career was to make some change happen over there, and we all learn probably the hard way, and me in particular, that it wasn't about them changing, but it was about me changing. And I guess we'll get into that in part two. But some of the things I brought home, I lived in a small town in the high plains desert of San Luis Potosi. It was not a small town like your town. I mean, it was actually, I guess you could call it a small pueblo. It was kind of the central point of a lot of sustainable ejido communities, about 150 ejido land grant subsistence farming communities surrounded the town that I lived in. And I worked with the Mexican Peace Corps, I mean, the Mexican EPA, and these two engineers and I served these ejido communities, providing conservation and solutions. But my main project was to work with two women's communities and help them transform their way of being from subsistence farming, which was taking a real beating because of climate change, to something more sustainable. And we started a project called Viva Viveros, which is live trees. So we were growing and raising and cultivating trees for projects of reforestation. Um, and um, and my whole world became sort of, the Mexicans are quite conservative, my whole world, I guess, one of the biggest things I brought back was a really deep felt sense that the earth was really, that the resources were really limited, and that you had to be very careful with them. And I kept a bucket in the shower with me to preserve water because they had water issues. And I composted. I was teaching them composting, and learned composting, and I brought that back with me, and everything was solar powered there. And I came back and I installed an array of solar on my roof in Mount Pleasant, DC. And they're just little things that I think I've done to keep that experience with me, and to keep reminding myself that this land and is precious. I solar cook, so it's one of the projects that I took on when I was there teaching solar cooking. And when I got back, I have a solar cooker, and I cook in my backyard in the city here. So that's something I'll never forget. I'm to the point where I almost drive myself crazy with my trying to optimize resources, but I guess it's a worthy cause, and it was a great lesson to learn. I never would have felt that to that sort of visceral level of the importance of being careful and thoughtful had I not gone to the Peace Corps. So let's see, who should I call in next? How about let's see, there was a gal there that looked, I mean, I'm not sure who's on the panel and who's not. There was a woman who was serving in Costa Rica, and I wanted to hear her story.
Yeah, Ursula. And then
Ursula.
the people who are pinned, the slightly larger images, we're all on the panel.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
The
that.
9 images, yeah.
Okay, so I'd
So-
love to hear from Ursula.
Hey, thank you. My dog might start barking. So, something I guess really quickly off the bat, my dog's name is Bosque, which means forest in Spanish. So that's something I brought back with me.
Arabic to give you the
Spanish language.
next one.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect.
We can't really
So
see
yeah,
you because your screen is, can you bend your screen
it's
down a little
being
bit?
weird. Okay, yeah. Hey.
There.
Yeah, I look a mess. So yeah, I served in Costa Rica. I was there from 12 to 14. And I wasn't a younger volunteer. I was kind of in the middle. I was 20. It's crazy. I'm going to say I was 23, 24. And that was, that was younger. Or that was in the middle because most of the people I served with were like 21, 20. So I guess I was on the younger crowd, but anyways, I say that to say I've always been like an older soul, and I've always gravitated towards folks that are 10 years older than me, 20 years older than me. So most of my friends throughout service were older folks, and most of the people I hung out, I was a youth development volunteer, and I hung out with little kids, but I mainly hung out with older folks just because I study anthropology and I really love learning about cultures and other people. So, a way to do that, especially in Costa Rica, is over coffee. So I was going to cafecitos all the time with, grandmothers and grandpas and just, uncles and aunts. And that was kind of like my service. I kind of shifted and I started looking more at like resource management and like really eco-focused. Costa Rica is really known for their ecotourism. So I did a lot of courses around like, give me 1 second.
She's got a few perritos there.
I know I got like 3, they are wild beasts. I had to go
wow.
into another room. So thank you for being patient. So I kind of shifted, and this is my belief around community development, and it kind of extends into the way I organize in the US is the resources and the knowledge already in that community. Like I don't necessarily need to go as an American, or I don't necessarily need to go as somebody that's from Seattle into Washington, DC to do it. The knowledge is already there. You know what I mean? It's what I feel like my role was while I was there, and also kind of extending to now, is kind of just either facilitating or just kind of seeing how it goes about and offering my perspective. And my perspective as, like a Black woman in the United States, how that can help form and how that can help inform anything that they're doing in their community. So my really good friend, her name was Doña Francia. She was my counterpart, and she was kind of like the oddball of the town. She was very eclectic and just, very random, but I immediately grew to love her. She was my favorite person, and she knew everything. So kind of like T Fox was saying, like one thing that she said was like, hey, I don't want you to write nothing for me. We're not doing no grants. We're going to do all of this on our own. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. So, it's my service was more about really just kind of like integrating and learning about the culture, and really just kind of learning how I could be part of it without necessarily co-opting it. You get what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we have folks that go and they integrate completely and they lose a sense of themselves. And I was not about that. I was like, you know what? I'm American, and I'm a Black American, and I want to learn about you being a Costa Rican, and like, you being a Costa Rican and your unique experience. So something I brought back was just, a lot of medicinal uses for plants and medicines. My host grandma, I lived with my host family the entire time, and she would just pick a vine off the tree and be like, oh, this is for cholesterol. I'm like, what do you mean it's for cholesterol? You know what I mean? So I learned a lot about medicinal uses for plants, but also I learned a lot about folklore. That's another really interesting thing that kind of stuck with me. So like, I remember one of my friends was pregnant. I was like, don't look at the moon when it was full. And she kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I was like, because if you look at the moon when it's full, the baby's going to be formed with like, either a birthmark that looks interesting or like a dent in their ear or something like that. And that's just a folklore that, Costa Ricans told pregnant women. So I walked away with a lot of like urban legends, folklore, just like a lot of things that would interest an anthropologist. So I think that's it for right now and that first question. So yeah, excited to be here with you guys, and happy Peace Corps birthday. Oh, I have to pick somebody. Michael, are you a person? No?
No, maybe so the people left to speak are Francis and Jennifer, Melissa,
Okay.
and
Francis,
Jane
how
Sharon.
about you go?
Francis. You just have to unmute Francis.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Before I went to South Korea, I did a few things that kind of got me ready for this experience. I went into Peace Corps at age 31, but I had been married. I was just at the end of a divorce when I got to Korea. I had gone to the University of Arizona to learn special education and had taught for a few years. And my first year of teaching was on a Papago reservation in Arizona. And I did home visits to families where they had outdoor clay ovens and dirt floors and a lot of very interesting kinds of medical practices that 20 miles further out when you get off the reservation would never happen. So I had some notion of maybe what it would be to be in a different culture. But I showed up in Korea at 31 and a little bit shell-shocked from my divorce, and packed enough warm clothes because Korea is a cold country. And that particular year, which was 1978 is when I got there, but just prior to that, the United States had passed a law 94-142, which said that all school-age children were to be educated. And so that's when special education teachers became so valuable. And Korea followed suit, and they were scrambling to try to train enough people. People didn't know how to deal with handicapped children because up until then, they had mostly kept them out of sight. So I was assigned to a school for the blind in the only province in Korea that's landlocked. So we didn't have a coastline, big city, but it felt like multiple small villages because we, lived in smaller sort of areas, or what they called a dong. And so we kind of see the same people all the time. I could walk to work pretty easily. I could ride my bicycle to work pretty easily. Or if I didn't want to do either of those, I just tried to get out of sight from the people that my boarding house people, so they wouldn't see me, and then I'd take a cab. But that was my private little, that was my little secret. I learned how to squat over an open fountain to turn on the water faucet and brush my teeth, and I had a nice system of using the electric hot coffee pot at night. I'd fill it with water, either make some tea or drink some warm water, pour some on a washcloth to wash my face, and then let the rest of it cool to have some drinking water in the morning before I sort of started the whole process again. And one of the things that happened at the school was, it took me years to find this out, but I was touching these kids because that's what I had done in the States. Handicaps were not a problem for me. I liked children, and I would hold them or I'd stroke them and talk to them. And about, I think it was 20 years later, I found out that that was pretty much a big deal, because a lot of those teachers had gone to the university to learn. The two men that became kind of my favorites had trained to become ginseng farmers. And they went to the same church as the principal, and he said, just try teaching blind children for 1 year. And if you can't do that, then become ginseng farmers. And one of them is still there, and he's the principal. And the other one is one of the closest friends I've ever had. His wife died right about the time their daughters were in their late teens, early 20s. Unfortunately, it was the aftermath of Great Depression that made her die. And so those two girls asked me to be their godmother. So now Mark and I have 5 grandchildren and these 2 daughters. And I refer to Mr. Kim as my baby daddy, but that's a joke. So one of the things that I brought back was sort of like, Rhett, what you were talking about was bringing back a family. It took me a long time, but when I got back from Korea, I had to sort of reestablish as a single woman who had been kind of sleeping on the floor for a couple of years, and I went to work in a mental hospital in Texas. And there were a lot of things to get used to, but I did. And then when I was able to start going back to Korea, I made it, my plan was to try to go once a year. And in the years since I made that plan, I've probably gone maybe 11 times out of 20 or something. I don't know for sure, but I've been able to maintain those relationships with the blind school. I always go there, and have made other friends and developed relationships with the art community there. So I think that those traditions of friendship and the kind of intimacy that Koreans, they're very standoffish, they're very formal, but if they love you. So that's I think the thing that I brought back. So let's see. And I did want to mention that Mark is here. He didn't go to the Peace Corps, but he taught in a college in Minnesota, so maybe that would count. So and so let's see. I would like to call on Michael. Would you like to talk? Oh, Michael, you said you couldn't.
No, Michael was just hanging out with us, but
I could say
Go
a few
ahead.
words. But
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let
I
me
want to hear
find
about
him.
Sierra
Let me find
Leone.
him.
I think Jay and Shannon. Sharon?
Yeah, we still have a few people from the panel
Okay,
left.
I'll be real fast. I won't be too long.
Okay.
Okay, I joined the Peace Corps when I was 20 years old. I hear a lot of you saying you're much older. I joined in 1969 during the Vietnam War, and I didn't want to go to Vietnam. I had 2 brothers already who were over there, and I didn't want to go, so I joined the Peace Corps instead. And at that time, you could get out of Vietnam by joining the Peace Corps. I'm from New York City originally, so there's a lot of different nationalities where I live in New York City. I live in Portland, Oregon now, but back then I lived in New York City. Anyway, I went to Sierra Leone West Africa. It was a beautiful country at the time when I went there. I was in community development, agricultural development. Here I was from New York City, and I was supposed to teach people how to grow coffee and cocoa and rice. What do I know about that stuff, right? Well, the thing is, they put you through a training for 6 months. And in 6 months, you're supposed to have enough knowledge to teach these people how to grow coffee and cocoa, stuff that you've never even seen native. So I went over there and I found that the people over there weren't really interested in growing coffee and cocoa because they were doing it their way and they didn't want to do it an expensive American way. So what I got into instead was putting in water supply systems and pumps over existing wells and gravity feed water supply systems and stuff like that. So I brought back from me, actually Lisa was a friend of mine. She invited me to listen into this meeting, so I'm not supposed to speak, I guess. But I lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you're 73 years old. I just had my first COVID shot a week ago, and I've been trying like mad to get a COVID shot, but they're hard to get. You know how it is over there? It's really difficult here to get a COVID shot. Anyway, one thing I brought back from West Africa was an African mask, and I donated it to the museum in Washington, D.C., the Atkins Museum. Do you know that one, Lisa?
No.
No, okay. It's a museum over there. They're going to put on an exhibit for the 60 years of Peace Corps experience. So I gave them my African mask, which I treasured for many years, and I wrote a little story about it. So that's all I got to say.
Well, it's great having you here, Colombo, or Michael Colombo, fellow Italian American.
You can call me Colombo.
We served in Crisis Corps in Beaumont, Texas together following Rita Katrina, and he was a great friend to me there. We had a horrible bunch of people, and he was the only good guy. It was really a tough assignment. But yeah, so it was an experience, but it's good to see you. And
you too.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll make it out to Portland, and I'll look for your artifact in the Peace Corps Museum.
Let me say one other thing. This is the first time I've ever been on a Zoom meeting, believe it or not. I've never been to a Zoom meeting before, so I don't know what it's like, and it's kind of intimidating seeing all you people out there. So
well, don't be afraid. We're just
anyway, thank you, Lisa, thank you for inviting me.
So good to see you. And how about if I call on our next person, Jennifer from Mali?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa and everyone. It's so fun. I saw you post this in the Peace Corps group for DC, and then I posted it today, and my neighbor Nicole's here who did Peace Corps in Benin. It sounds like there's a large West Africa contingency. I did the Peace Corps in Mali from 2008 to 2012. So I did my 2 years in a village. I did a 3rd year and extended, and then I came home and did Peace Corps response all in Mali. For the first 2 years, I was in a village about 9 hours north of the capital. This is not a paid site, no pressure, but I'll put my blog here in the chat if you want to read everything about what I did. And I printed it in a book for my mom that I have here. So I was an environment volunteer for the first 2 years, and then worked with a women's shea butter cooperative and a cereal bank with a men's group. And it's what's so neat, Michael, you being here on Zoom for your first Zoom call. And when I went in 2008, they just were getting like cell service in the village where I was in. And now, 2021, my host dad is sending me WhatsApp videos of the cereal bank that we worked on together, like this early, last week, and I can FaceTime with them, or we do WhatsApp. They're in the field sending videos of them working in the fields. It's like mind blowing to me. And so when I moved to the capital, and I thought I was going to go into art history, like West African art. And then I met my husband, Abdullah, who's here. He's from Guinea, from Conakry, and changed my life. This is the you know, if you talk about so I guess I brought home, and then also changed everything, was meeting my husband when I started my 3rd year. And yeah, we now live in Hyattsville, Maryland, and we love, you know, Peace Corps, love celebrating Peace Corps Week, and it's just, yeah, been a big change my life in ways I could never have imagined. And also Nicole, who was we had babies at the same time. Hey, Nicole, I won't make you come out on video, but it's just so fun the ways that our lives all intersect, and great to see everyone here.
Go ahead and pick the next. We still have to hear from Melissa and Jay and Sharon.
Pat, no. Oh, okay. Are you not on? I'm sorry.
Melissa and Jay and Sharon still need to present.
Oh, well, Jay and Sharon, where are y'all?
And you guys just need to unmute.
I just asked
Jay
you
and Sharon.
to unmute. Oh, you're still muted, but let's see. I'm going to ask you. There might be a little blue dot that's coming up. Okay, there you go. You're unmuted.
Hi, we were a married couple 1 year, and then we went into Peace Corps and had a 2-year honeymoon in Salvador, Brazil, which was the 7th largest city in Brazil at the time. About 2 hours by air north of Rio. Sharon and I were doing 2 completely separate things. We were trained in Chicago for rural health and community development. When we landed in Brazil, our whole Peace Corps experience changed 150%. Sharon had been a speech pathologist graduate, and they were desperate to get in Salvador, Brazil, a replacement for a speech pathologist Peace Corps volunteer. I'll let her talk about that. So we, instead of rural health, where we learned all about the horrors of rabies, and we were vaccinated for rabies, and we knew all about the diseases, we wound up in a suburb of the 7th largest city in Brazil. Basically, I was excess baggage. Sharon had her job all set to replace, and basically I was told to do community development. Well, the state Peace Corps director, who was in the city, because that's the capital of the state, couldn't even find the barrio where I was going to work. It's called favela in Portuguese, a barrio. We drove around for a while, we finally found it. He stopped the car, looked around and said, "You're gonna have a tough time identifying your work." Yeah, because he had nothing going on. So basically I had no equivalent, no basic setup, nothing. There was a counterpart who came out to the barrio once. She was a fairly, how should I put it? She was a university graduate in social work. She took one look at this slum and never returned. Hence, I was left on my own, and I managed to do a few interesting jobs. I tried to get tourism going in Salvador, Brazil. Now, this was in 1966. There was like one tourist agency where you bought a ticket to get out of the place. Today, Salvador is the #1 spot for US people of African American descent, because the whole culture of Brazil is encapsulated in the Afro-Brazilian culture. So I was doing different projects, whatever I could do. I was a house husband for quite a bit. And what we brought back from Brazil is our first son, because he was made in Brazil. And his middle name is Sergio. And he's never been to Brazil, and he's 50. So we keep encouraging him to go at some point. I also brought back a couple of macaws. Those are the giant parrots. And so, but we had a great time, and I'll let Sharon tell you what she really did, which was good.
Yeah, I had asked if they had anything going in speech and language,
In training, 3 months.
and they said no. Well, at the airport in Rio, 2 volunteers, one an audiologist and one a speech and language pathologist, met me practically at the at the plane and said, we just started this clinic in the Hospital das Clínicas, the public hospital. Can you please come? And because they were leaving like in 3 months or something. So it was very challenging. I had learning Portuguese wasn't as difficult because I had already spoken Spanish, but to be thrust into training women using Portuguese, I had three Brazilian women, middle-aged women, one in a Catholic clinic and 2 in this public clinic. And I translated books, and it was really a great experience because I think, was it 8 years after? No, actually 15 years after we returned to Brazil, and the clinic was still in existence as actually part of the medical school.
Until you also diagnosed in Portuguese.
Yeah, well, I diagnosed too in Portuguese, but the difficulty was we really lived in it was very, very poor. We didn't have running water. We did have electricity. And I had to take a bus. Actually, the bus didn't even have a back on it, dressed for the city. And I think it was about a half an hour ride, but we loved Brazil, and we still love Brazil. We still speak Portuguese. We listen to Portuguese, to Brazilian music, and we've been back, I think, 4 times. Unfortunately, the situation in Brazil now is very bad. The president is, well, can't say worse, but both, it's just tragic. And the COVID situation also, we still correspond with friends in Rio. So, but it was, I think that the experiences all of us have had, it's part of your life now, part of your being. So I really appreciate Lisa organizing this. Thank you. So I think there's one more person. Am I supposed to designate somebody?
Yeah, designate somebody.
Hello?
The next person is Melissa.
So hi, I'm Melissa. I served in the country of Benin in West Africa from 2003 to 2005. I went right out, and I was an environmental volunteer. So I had majored in marine biology, and I thought I was going to go to the Philippines, and that's where I wanted to go. And then
It's pretty
my
choppy,
assignment came, and it
Melissa.
said Benin, West Africa.
Melissa,
your connection, where that is.
Your connection keeps breaking up, Melissa. Melissa, is there a way of improving that? Yeah, I see you're changing position.
I'll try to move closer to a router.
Yeah.
All right, this might be better. Is that better?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I was a volunteer in Benin, West Africa. I went right out of undergrad, and I had majored in marine biology and thought that they were going to send me to the Philippines, and I was very excited about that. And then my assignment came for Benin, and I had no idea where that was. But I said, okay, sure. So that's where I went. I was an environmental volunteer, and my first assignment was to a very, very small village in the southern part of the country. There were no roads. You could only get there by a motorcycle or a bicycle. And I had no running water, no electricity, nothing like that. And I worked at a sustainable agriculture school it was for boys. And I was there to help with the village, but also help with the school in teaching them computers. We had a generator and one computer, and they ran the generator one night a week. And so I would teach some basic computer skills. And And then I also worked with the community doing AIDS training and latrine building and those types of things. And then halfway through my service, I ended up hurting my back, and the ride to and from on the motorcycle was just not great. So they switched my village to another village called Hosine, and that was a stilt village that was right on the river between Nigeria and Benin. And so you would see these giant boats full of petrol crossing the river. And then partway through the year, it would be flooded and all the houses were elevated. And so that was really interesting. In my second village, I did work on ecotourism. I worked with a work partner who was developing an ecotourism adventure. It was still in its infancy, so we never actually took people except for the people that I invited, other Peace Corps volunteers, to come try it out. And we would go to a sacred forest and he did some whale watching and then sea turtle conservation. So just a variety of different things. What I brought home, I met my husband at the agricultural farm. He was one of the students. We were the same age, but he was a student. And we ended up getting married and coming back to the US. And, I brought him from Benin right to Alabama. And then we went right from Alabama to Mississippi. And then we moved to DC, and he said, this is it. This is where we stay. We're not going anywhere else. So, we've been able to plug in. There's a large community of Beninese in the DC area. And so, we've been able to go to meet a lot of people, go to weddings, go to funerals, all of those types of things. And in addition, one of the neatest things I think that I've been able to share is living in this area. It's so diverse, and there are so many return Peace Corps volunteers. My daughters both go to a French immersion public school, and in their class, they each have probably 5 or 6 return Peace Corps volunteer parents in the class. And every year the school does a cross-cultural night, and it's pretty amazing. There's like 30 or 40 countries represented in the cafeteria, and everybody brings food and all of their stuff, and a lot of it is Peace Corps volunteers. So, I had a fabulous time. I was ready to come home, and then I got home and I thought, why was I so ready to come home? But, we haven't been back since. My husband's gone back a couple of times. Most recently, he actually, I'm Facebook friends with my host family, my sisters and brothers. And so when my husband went back, he actually met my host family and stayed with them, and they attended his father's funeral. And so they're still, they're still in my life. And, it was an adventure for sure. So I think that's back to you, Francis.
Yes, that was a great story, Melissa. Thank you. And now that we've gone around once, we'd like to talk about, let's see, it was I had it all memorized. How did your lifestyle change when you got there? And then how did your lifestyle change when you got back? And let's start with Lisa again, but we don't have to stay in the same order after that.
Oh, yeah, we don't have time for everyone to comment on every question. So I'll pass.
Okay.
I'll pass it on. Who wants to comment on that question?
Lifestyle. How did your lifestyle change? Oh, Melissa, let's hear it.
Sure. So lifestyle wise, going over and coming from, I had no running water, no electricity, and just having the day focus around your daily tasks. It's not, you don't flip on the light or flip on the tap or wash your clothes in a washing machine. If you're going to do laundry, it's an afternoon activity. And just that pace of life and being able to not the rush to pack your day with a million different things, but just to enjoy the time that you have. And then I guess coming back, it's been interesting because I brought my husband back, and he didn't speak any English when we came to this country. So we went from speaking 100% French to, when we came back here, speaking 100% English. So it was interesting to see that cross, teaching, because he came from a very rural, poor village as well. And so, not having experience with running water or microwaves or washing machines or stoves, there's a very steep learning curve. And so it's been very interesting to come back. But I think, what some of what I've taken is just the amount of effort that goes in to daily living activities for, getting water, getting your firewood, cooking your meal is very different than what we have here. And so I think something that we've taken with us is just being appreciative of the things that we do have, and also trying to conserve as much as we can. So for the first couple of years when we came back, we both took bucket showers because that's what we were used to, and it seemed very wasteful to run the shower. Now, obviously, it's been enough years that we take nice long hot showers, but that thought is still in my head. It's I don't have to go to the river and fetch the water, go to the foot pump and pump the water and then carry it back to my home. I'm able to just turn on a tap. So
Thank you, Melissa. And let's take a page from Melissa. She gave us a lot of information, very interesting things, but she was pretty succinct. So that's what we need at this point. T, did I see that your hand was up? Yeah. Okay,
Sure.
let's hear it, T.
Thank you. Recycle, reuse, renew, repurpose. I cannot. I just not to the new quote unquote minimalist way of living. No, it's not being wasteful, and it's being mindful, like Melissa said. And so I no longer need 5 pairs of rain boots. And I was living in San Diego. This time when I went to Eswatini, I took pairs of rain boots with me, right? And I wound up leaving them there. And this is the story I wanted to share with you. I will never forget. I had a pair of flip-flops that broke. I threw them away in the trash, and this is in Zambia. A couple of days later, I see the grandmother of the family I was living with the flip-flops on, and I'm just like, I'm looking at her feet. What you doing? You got those out my trash, and you fixed them, and yeah, she did that. And from that point forward, I have never thrown away another pair of flip-flops. I fix them by putting a safety pin through them. I don't throw anything away without using it 2 or 3 times nowadays. That hole in the sweater. And now I can't wear it anymore. I got a stain right here. None of that is real for me anymore. I still hang up my clothes on a dryer here in America, and I've been back since 2016 on and off. I can't use a dryer. I just can't. My heart won't let me do it. Nothing is that rushed for me to have it dried now. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, T. That was great. Boy, I should take a couple of lessons from you. I don't think that any of us came back with a sense of entitlement, but who wants to be next? Is it Anna?
I'll share.
Jay?
I'll share a
Jay,
little story I have.
Yeah, Anne and Jay, and then we should go on to the next question for
Okay.
time.
Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just recalling that my first week back, I was down in the metro in DC, and waiting for the train, and I just felt, wow, so space age down there, watching these trains swoosh by. And I noticed though that everyone on the platform was looking down at at a phone or something. I was gone from 2010 to 20. I kind of came back in 2013, and in that time, the phone went from being something you kind of used for email, but then it became something. And I had my friend was standing next to me. I said, "What are they all looking at?" I still hadn't gotten a phone. I had a flip phone over there, and I kind of was holding out on getting a phone, and the answer to that question was everything.
And we called those caveman moments when we came back,
Yeah, the
right?
caveman moment.
Those are those fire, when cavemen found fire or discovered fire. That's what
Yeah.
those moments are like. They're like, wow. Like,
But it was an inverse caveman moment because I was like, I
yeah.
am not doing that. And I refused to get a smartphone for 6 months until my friends finally dragged me into the Apple store and said, we can't communicate with you. You're getting a phone now. And I'm like, but I like that you can't get. So anyway, that was, I don't know how that answers your question exactly, but I think that stayed with me. I still don't think I'm as comfortable as a lot of people constantly being bombarded by that. And I pine for that isolation that was difficult. But I do pine for that sometimes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. That's great. And Jay, what were you going to tell us? Where's Jay? Lisa, can we find Jay?
They need to
Can we-
unmute.
Jay, you need to
you-
unmute.
Can somebody unmute him?
Okay, there he is. I see him.
Okay.
All right, well, to answer the first part of your question real quick, what I learned when I arrived in Brazil was the huge impact that my country had on the rest of the world. People would come up to me, I would be the first person from the United States they've ever met. And the question would be, what's a rich country like you doing in Vietnam, in a poor country? I would get feedback from, I organized a 1-year Peace Corps get-together. All the volunteers from our group, Brazil, would get together at the end of the year. And I asked a very prominent cultural, Afro-Brazilian cultural professor at the university to speak to us, and he wouldn't. He said, I couldn't. I said, why? He said, because my students would be so angry if I went to a US related thing. Anyway, okay, what we brought back was the urge to travel. We had only been in a couple of countries before, and we wound up, we've now been in about 55 different countries. And we have 2 more trips planned this year to Iceland and Portugal. We speak Portuguese, so we go to Portuguese places like 4 times. Anyway, that's what my contribution is.
Thank you, Jay. We wonder too, maybe you can think about this for a minute, all of you. What kind of epiphany did you find while you were there or when you came back? What was it that really just
Maybe-
forever changed you?
Wait,
Is that
maybe
right,
we should,
Lisa?
I think we didn't talk about culture shock. Maybe we should talk.
Oh,
the
I'm sorry.
epiphany was the last.
Let's talk about culture shock.
We
Okay,
skipped.
you asked the question, Lisa.
Oh, well, tell us about the culture shock you experienced during your service, because this really affects, your experience. Does anyone have a story to relate to culture shock? I know for myself, I had culture, and Laura, my friend Laura, who was with me in Estonia, I love Estonia like a second home now, but I went into Peace Corps as a vegetarian coming from Southern California with all fresh fruits and vegetables and eating spicy Mexican and Thai food. And then I went there and they barely put any salt on the food. And it was, the only vegetable we saw was maybe a cabbage and a potato. And I was shocked by how much meat they all ate, and they fatty meats, especially sausages, and they were also thin. And I couldn't figure it out, but they were paleo before everybody else was paleo. They were doing the low carb diet because I gained 30 pounds in Peace Corps because I hated the food and I was eating Nutella. When I was with my host family, I was hiding in my room eating Nutella in my bedroom. Just 'cause I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle eating the animal products, but I eventually, I dated a guy from the chicken factory. My mom called me and I said, I'm making dinner for him. He's coming over. And she goes, she goes, oh, maybe he'll bring you a sausage. And I opened the door and he goes, "Oh, chicken sausage." And I'm like,
Oh,
he
gosh.
brought me chicken
Ooh.
sausage. I eventually had to start eating. I had to start
You
eating.
saw the light, Lisa. You
What?
saw the light. You saw the light.
Yeah, I started
So-
eating meat. I gradually, and I was told by Laina
Mhm.
Limbavera, who was supposed to join us, but it's like middle of the night in Estonia right now. She said I became the
Mhm.
most Estonian in my group.
I'm
So
sure you did.
I
I
adapted.
thought about when I got to Korea, it's considered polite to belch, especially the men, belch to show how much you enjoyed the food. And that was immediately when I decided something that I guess it was Ursula said was, no, I'm an American person visiting in Korea, and it is not my job to belch or get drunk just because you want me to, or the a lot of the guys were having a blast with this stuff. They'd say, well, we don't want to be culturally insensitive. So they were just doing all these things that their mamas had told them not to do. But learning not to get all flipped out when the people were belching, or two men walking down the street holding hands, two women walking down the street holding hands. Pretty soon I was walking down the street holding hands with my girlfriends too, because that's what you do. And when I'm in Korea now, I still hold hands with whoever I'm walking with, because it doesn't have the same connotation there. So those are small cultural things. I did enjoy on our last trip. We were down on Jeju Island, and this was about a year and a half ago, and there were about 4 couples there, and the men seemed that they only had one agenda for the night, and that was to get Dr. Hansel drunk. And his agenda was to not get drunk. And I think he won, but it took a lot of finesse. So who else wants to tell about their culture shock?
Hank does. You need to unmute though, Hank.
Hank,
Oh,
unmute.
Hank.
Hi, I'm Hank Prensky. I live in Vermont now. I had lived in the DC area for the last 48 years. But one thing that strikes me that we haven't touched on, the only reference I saw to it was a question from Ken Roseman. And that's about being in the Peace Corps as a representative of the United States and what that meant politically. I was a volunteer in '68 and '69 at the absolute peak of the Vietnam War. And I lived in the Philippines, both 100 kilometers north of Manila and 100 kilometers south, different places. But there was 125,000 American troops stationed in the Philippines while I was there. And it was all but impossible to differentiate ourselves as, culturally sensitive, language speaking human beings. At the same time, the American military was involved in debauchery and murder throughout Southeast Asia. That was one part. The other was that there was tremendous political pressure and confusion within our group in the Peace Corps at that period of time. There was one group of volunteers from Manila had conducted an interview with a communist insurgent named Luis Taruk, who was then the head of the Hukbang Balahap, the communist insurgents in central Luzon. And they wrote an article explaining his views, and they were prevented from publishing that in the Peace Corps magazine. This was what was referred to by the ACLU as pre-publication censorship in 1968. And I was kicked out of the Peace Corps after 1 year, not because I had broken any rules or been a problem, but because Richard Nixon had appointed a new director of the Peace Corps named Joe Blatchford. It turned out that Joe Blatchford had been at the age of 30, had run an international development agency that he'd created which later was discovered to be largely a front for the CIA. I know this sounds like I'm ranting and raving here about politics, but what I'm saying is this was very much a part of my Peace Corps experience, to look back at the United States and see what the rest of the world saw of our incessant bombing and war in Vietnam, and our invasion of the Dominican Republic, and on and on. The great irony of this was that I was loved in the Philippines for all the wrong reasons. I was revered, I was pursued, I was encouraged, I was loved because I was white, and I was loved because I was an American, and I was loved because I was rich, and I was rich because I was white and American. So people treated us with the greatest deference and the greatest respect, but not because we earned it or deserved it. It was a very unsettling feeling of being well loved and realizing there was no basis for it. No real basis for it, and that to get to the point of having honest and genuine experiences with Filipinos took a tremendous effort to get beyond this vision of what America was all about from the standpoint of other people's view of America. I just want to lay that out.
Hank, you were also a male. So as a female in Mexico, most people wondered what the hell a middle-aged female was doing on the streets of their small town. Most people did not trust me, and they thought that really I was a spy. So people kept their distance, and I feel a little envious of all the people that like formed all these family ties and everything. My host country family basically turned on me because they didn't get what they wanted from me or what they expected from me, right? So and Mexico is an interesting country. I mean, it's definitely, I was not in a, I didn't, it wasn't the rusticness that a lot of you guys talk about. But it's the closest country in the world that's a developing country that butts up against the richest, most powerful country in the world. So United States is referred to, there's a saying there, so close to the United States, so far from God, right? So you were. So I don't know. So and geopolitically, I guess at the time, Bush was it Bush was in office? I suppose so. Gosh, I'm even losing track of the time. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that there's being a female in these places does not necessarily bestow on you that princely, that was my experience anyway.
And I thought that's great that you thought that they thought you were a spy. I had somebody that followed me the whole time when I was in Uzbekistan, and I never felt as safe as I've ever felt in Uzbekistan, because I knew if I ever got in trouble, my keeper was, a half a block away, watching what was happening. So I felt it was really safe. But the old man.
That's ironic because I had a friend. I finally made like a good friend. She was the only woman in town. She was like the Mala Mujer. She owned a bar, so she became I'm a barfly, so she became my instant friend. And she would say the only way that she was safe was by being near me.
Wow.
So even though I was like, people didn't trust me, they weren't going to touch me with a 10-foot pole. I was an amusement. I would go to Uzbekistan's a tea drinking culture, and I would go after class in the afternoon. I would go down and sit with the old men in the Uzbek hats and that were sitting there drinking their tea, the old World War II veterans, and sit down and just talk to them. And they got the biggest kick out of that, but they still thought I was a spy. But they thought, wow, a spy wants to talk to us. I mean, they found that really, really amusing.
I
I
think it
love
was
those
common.
hats. I love those hats.
I think Rhett and I probably had a similar experience being in former Soviet republics. When I was getting harassed by a group of skinhead boys, I used the whole fear of me maybe being a spy to my advantage because I wasn't getting any help from the local police. The local policeman showed up to my house one day drunk with all the bottles, and he didn't show up when I needed him. And so I realized I had to take the law into my own hands, and I told the school called a meeting when these skinheads were harassing me, and the school principal called the skinheads one by one. Why are you harassing your teacher and throwing, balls at her window, breaking her window and firecrackers and scaring her in the middle of the night? There were like 30 skinheads outside my window, middle of the night. I mean, keep in mind, I wasn't much older than them because a lot of them were some of them were like 19 years old because they had failed and they were still in high school, and I was 29. And so when I realized the policeman was even more corrupt, and he said, look at this dagger I took off those boys who were harassing you. I said, okay, if this is how you play. So I said, look, I was informed by the embassy, which was BS. I said, the embassy informed me that there are CIA agents who work at the chicken factory who are guarding me and watching every move going on in this village. And then the cop got so scared and told the skinhead boys, said, you need to stop doing this. You could disappear across the border overnight. And
Good for you, Lisa.
Yeah, so it worked to my advantage because I also reported it to the Peace Corps office, but the Estonian staff, were like, oh, it's not a big deal, don't worry about it. So you had to be resourceful and, kind of go with your cultural context, so yeah.
Yes. This is less political, but in my village, people were scared to come to my house and I didn't understand why. And somebody finally told me, and I also realized that the only TV show that was available by satellite was Dallas. And so their perception was that we all had guns in our house, and they were afraid to come to my house because we had guns. And their perception of women was also influenced by, those couple of TV shows. And I found that really, really interesting too, because I didn't find that, that was not a representation of 2003, United States. So
I was considered CIA, and sometimes I just shrugged and said, yeah, whatever. But a lot of people really did think I was CIA. Another thing that happened was that my brother was stationed at one of the army bases in South Korea, and I would go and visit him and sometimes would be invited to the officers club to dinner. And I found out later that there was an American officer who was a information collector, but he always had to give his source. So anything I said could not be written down, and apparently it was just driving him crazy. And I, of course, was just, like being a 32-year-old around a bunch of American, mostly men, after a long time of not having that. So, I was just probably blabbering, but he never could write any of it down. And I'm still trying to get the CIA to pay me my back wages. And none of that's happened. So
I think Jay and Sharon may have had a culture shock comment from Brazil.
Oh, I'll bet they did. That's good.
Jay, did you have a culture shock? I mean, they had a wonderful assignment in Brazil. What culture shock did you guys have? They made you eat pão de queijo and drink caipirinhas and dance all night.
I don't know, it's kind of a silly thing, but going to a grocery store and seeing shelves and shelves of cat and dog food. Coming back.
Oh, when you came back, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because there were barely any supermarkets where we were in Salvador, and the abundance was just shocking. So I don't know.
Coming home. So the biggest culture shock we had probably in Estonia was Estonians do not smile unnecessarily. If they're your friend, like in Korea, they are your friend, you know, they're your friend. And they don't smile just to smile. And so when I came home, I mean, we used to go to restaurants, and my friends and I would sit there and we'd see like couples sitting, and they wouldn't say a single word from appetizer to dessert. They would just eat and look at their plate, not even at each other, not a single word. And we would watch them to see if they would interact. And I was told by an Estonian that it wasn't that long ago, they were in such extreme poverty that the children were taught to remain silent during the meal because the food was so difficult. You know, they didn't want the children to complain about having to eat whatever they could gather from the fields, you know, rotten potatoes or something, or old meat, if they were that lucky. And so even, you know, when I ate with my colleagues in the school, and it really bugged me because I was always very social and I couldn't understand why people wouldn't talk. It really bothered me. And I had this impression that Estonians were boring. I mean, I think most Americans had that impression, but you know, after time you get to know them and there's a lot of more depth and there's a sense of humor that you learn that exists under these layers. But when I came home, the culture shock I had coming home, I was so angry when I'd be waiting in line in Starbucks and a woman would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Can I invite you to my church? You know, what religion are you?" And I would say, "It's none of your, you know what, business." You know, that really set me off. And so when I came home, people looked like they were doing this, like gritty, like baring all their teeth like a crazed animal. Like it looked really fake and plastic. And I think I still I smile less than I used to because it looks kind of ridiculous to over smile to me. And in the announcement I made, I actually showed a photo from my birthday, my first birthday there, with all my colleagues in the school, the teachers. And right as they were taking the photo, I said in Estonian to smile. So some of them are smiling, but normally you would have, you know, like a funeral looking, you know, serious kind of look on the face. So it was kind of, that was a shock coming back with all the smiling.
I taught a class to some of the teachers at the blind school one day, and we had this, it was something they brought me. It was a picture, kind of coloring book picture of American grocery store products. So I thought, okay, there were about 6 of us sitting around, and I think at least 3 of them were blind, but they could, you know, the other ones weren't. So they'd point to something and I'd say, "That's lettuce." And so then they would say, I like lettuce, or they'd use the word or practice it. And then we tried apple, and then there was milk, and there were a few other things. And then somebody touched the picture with a metal can, and I said, "That's dog food." And it got really silent, you know, because Koreans at that time still ate a lot of dog. I guess they still do, but they don't brag about it anymore if they're doing it. But it got very silent. And so one of them said, does that mean there's dog meat in the can? And I said, "No, it's meat from other animals in the can for the dogs to eat." And there was another silence and a little bit of conferring. And the English teacher, who was totally blind, she said, "Miss Francis, I believe that the dogs in America are very, very rich." So, yes, Jay.
Indeed they are. Jay, tell us about Brazil.
I've got a quick one about my culture shock there. We lived in a fairly a poor favela slum. And one thing that all the men would do would be to drink the sugarcane whiskey just routinely, cachaça. And it was so strong, they'd drink it and then they'd salivate and spit it out. Anyway, they kept offering me drinks, and I was not into that at all. So I had to tell them I had liver problems and I couldn't drink. And so they stopped doing that. But that was a major, social event to drink that cachaça. It was really cheap. It was like cheaper than bottled water, but I stayed away from it.
Wow. Yeah. Anybody else have a culture shock to talk about?
Well, I think I became like more American going and coming, and like I feel like I found a home when I moved to Mali. I'm very extroverted. I love being around people. And then when I moved to Mali, I was shocked at how quickly you would be invited to people's homes or to weddings or funerals or things that in the United States it would take years before you knew somebody to ever consider, barely here it's like before you invite them over for dinner to your house, let alone, oh, I met you, this afternoon, and would you like to come to this wedding that we're going to? And so that's a thing that for me was surprising, but I loved it moving there. And now that I've moved back to the US, that I kind of, Lisa, I'm probably the grinning idiot that you're seeing in the grocery store where you're like, what are you smiling at me about? Because I'm just like, oh, and Nicole here will verify, but like we have a little free library in front of our house and people walk by and I'm like, hello, are you a new neighbor? Did you want to talk to me or come by? And yeah, and then the thing that for like a cultural shift that I still think is hilarious is, so I was in Mali for 4 years. I met my husband halfway through. I would meet people in the United States. You meet somebody and you say, hello, like, hi, I'm Jennifer, and it's great to meet you. What's your name? So I came home. My husband had been here. So this has been my transformation, or like, I suppose my cultural reintegration through now. He's been here a long time, but in the beginning, seeing his adjustments to life here and learning things that I had been doing in Mali that like I should not have been doing. So he was meeting people and he would never say his name to anybody. So they would, hi, I'm Jennifer. And he would say, hello. And then I was seeing this and I was thinking, wow, if you like play it out in your mind, like it seems very rude to an American to not offer up your name as well. And so I asked him about it and I was like, why are you, do you not like all of my family or my friends or all these people? He was like, no, you're never supposed to offer your name. You always wait until they ask you what your name is. And I was like, honey, I just spent 4 years like shouting my name to people. And then we went home to Virginia Beach and he was meeting he met a family friend who greeted him, and she sees Abdullah, who again, he's from West Africa, and she sees Abdullah, she goes, Jumbo. And he goes, hello, Jumbo, my name is Abdullah. And she was like, no, Jumbo, it means hello in Swahili. And he's like, I don't speak Swahili. And so there was things like that now that like are happening. I think about what folks must have thought of me saying my name all over the place, and then now seeing it on the other side.
I'm glad your name's not Jumbo.
Well, Jumbo, I mean, it's just, yes, I mean, it's a great name though, if it is your name.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I guess so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So great. Well, maybe we can segue to our final question, and then we'll have a little time at the end for other comments and questions from the rest of our visitors about epiphanies.
Did any of you have an epiphany? Did you have an epiphany when you got there? Or did you have an epiphany when you got back? I think the first epiphany that I had was that when I got to Korea, unfortunately, I had brought me with me. And so I had to deal with her. So that was the first one, was, okay, you're in a whole new place. Everything is foreign. I remember saying, what am I doing here? But I had to take me along everywhere I went. So who else wants to talk about epiphanies?
I'm happy to. I think
you do. Oh, wait a minute. Who?
Go
Hank.
ahead, that was Brett. Go ahead, Brett.
Brett.
I think
and then Melissa.
I think one of the things that I realized after that was that I could do anything in the world, right? I mean,
Sure you could.
I think the biggest lesson from that was you can get through anything that's tough. You can learn a language. If you put your mind to it, you can be successful at it. And I think the Peace Corps was just a big lesson in that for me. And I think I've always given it Peace Corps credit for everything I've done afterwards and failed at or been successful at. So because there's a lot of failure in Peace Corps, but you learn how to get up and try again. And so Peace Corps, I think the epiphany for me was I can do anything. If I can get through that, I can get through anything.
I guess mine is that people are people, and no matter where you are in the world, people have the same just wants, desires, hardships. A group of young men is a group of young men, no matter where you are, just like a group of kids, So I think that was something for me to say, we're really not different. Our cultures might be different, our languages might be different, but there's so much that's the same about us. And I think that was a way to connect on that kind of level. So
my thought was first that it was a rude awakening that being from the US, I didn't have the answers to hardly anything, certainly not everything. And ultimately, I think it was the seed of becoming an internationalist for the rest of my life. And this is merely 53 years ago that I was in the Peace Corps. The other thing was when I left the Peace Corps and chose to get kicked out because of the political situation, it was a real epiphany when people kept saying, why are you doing that? What about your permanent record? It's going to look really bad on your permanent record. And I realized at the ripe old age of 22 that I didn't care about my permanent record. If I couldn't explain to some future employer or some friend or some colleague what the world was like, then it didn't matter that if they had some bad view of me. I could proceed in my life. I could, as Rhett was saying, I could probably do anything I wanted to do. I, traveled halfway around the world at barely 21 years old, and my God, it was. I didn't have to worry about my permanent record, and I still don't.
Now, I had something that really blew my mind, and this relates to living in a culture that doesn't talk much, a very silent, very tagasi hoidli, holding back kind of culture, shyer than like Japanese or, the most reserved cultures that we may think of, the Estonians. And Finns are also like this. I spent my whole 2 years, tapping my students, saying to them, why can't you just chat with people? What's wrong with you guys? Why can't you talk to people? I see people sitting in restaurants, not talking at all. And, why can't you chat with them if you're sitting next to them on the bus? And one of my smartest student named Mereli, she spoke 5 languages fluently because she was half Finnish. And she said to me, I have a right to be alone in my own thoughts. And I thought, oh my God, I had never thought of that. And like, I need to learn to enjoy. Whenever I would before that, whenever I'd fly a plane, I would oh God, I hope I'm next to somebody interesting because I'm going to be talking to them the whole flight. I'm the person who chats the whole flight, but not anymore. Now I've, because of Estonia and the Estonians, I've learned to appreciate being alone in my own thoughts, and there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm still open for interesting conversation too, if the opportunity arises. But as someone, my friend Laura, who's here, who served with me in Estonia, called me a people junkie because she'd go with me in shops and I would strike up conversations with people wherever I went. And I learned Estonian pretty well, so I could chat more. You know, I was annoying to her, but now I think I've found like more of a balance. You know, I'm still quite social, but now I can appreciate the silence, you know, the moments of silence and being alone with my own thoughts. So that was really, really
Well,
something.
this gets to the question of does one really change? Now, come on, Lisa. All right. I have a little thing to share, which is that about my epiphany, which, and you know, and again, I it's the same thing for me. I went to the Peace Corps as a mid-career person. I was a professional organization development consultant and change coach. And my boy, was I ever ready to make some change in Mexico. You know, they needed me and I was going to help them. And, you know, that, of course, we all know that that is not going to work. It just doesn't work that way. So, you know, my big, I guess the mantra was, which sounded trite at the time, but it became more and more real to me, is do what you can with what you've got where you are. And it was really about just letting go, letting go, letting go. I mean, letting go of any expectation that your effort was going to pay off, you know. So put in the effort, let go of the result. Didn't mean you didn't put in the effort, but you just had. And so anyway, you know, I'm not good at it. Like, you know, I'm willful. I always have been, probably since the day I was born, and I want things to go well and right, and I want things to be optimized, and I want everybody to be happy and doing the best they can. And you know, you can't make that always happen. So I'm still learning that. The Peace Corps did, you know, opened a window onto it. It didn't cure me.
That's a great story. Thanks, Anna. So who else has had an epiphany? Who have we not heard from? Let me see here.
I'll hop in.
Jay and
Okay.
Sharon are coming back too. Or, oh, hi. We have a new person there.
Hi, I'm Joe. I served in Zambia. I think I joined right after college, and you know, I've got my own life lessons. I think are probably similar to everybody else's. But when I look back on, you know, my time, I feel like Peace Corps has given me wisdom beyond my years. It taught me how to, you know, live a good life and to understand what was important. How do I prioritize, you know, how I spend my time, who it's with, where do I go for my vacations? And I heard this from one of you all earlier this evening that, you know, you credit it with all of your success. So, you know, everything I've ever done, I've had a very successful career. I'm still in my career. But I mean, I'm at the end of the day, no matter how successful I become, I think I'll always be that kid in the village with the long hair and the beard and the knife strapped to my waist, ready to, you know, butcher my own animals. And I'll always be like humility. Humility is probably like my biggest lesson from that, no matter who I become here in the United States.
Thank you, Joe. That's great. Who else has an epiphany to share?
Yeah, maybe somebody from our audience, some RPCVs, maybe Laura, who served with me in Estonia.
Oh gosh, I'm sure I will get off of this call and think of 5 or 10, but I don't know if I had one big epiphany moment, to be honest. I think it was more just like coming back and really having this international experience embedded in my head in everything. I think we all have that in everything we do. It's so interwoven in the fabric of who you are. And it's always, yeah, that's all I can say. I'm going to come later, think of a million things and kick myself and be like, but yeah, that would be the big one.
And one
Great.
benefit of serving in the Peace Corps that I never thought about, that wasn't my reason for going in, but Laura and I both moved to DC with other RPCVs from Estonia and the Baltics. There are like 10,000 RPCVs in the DC DMV, and we got involved with the RPCV community and served on the RPCVW board together. So that was like a great, the network and the community, the Peace Corps community you have for the rest of your life. Like you could automatically like meet an RPCV for the most part. There are a couple crazy ones out there, but you can say, oh yeah, if you're gonna be in town, you're welcome to stay at my place. You know, you can just automatically trust a fellow return Peace Corps volunteer for the most part.
Well, they passed a security clearance. They might be weirdos, but they're safe.
There are some weirdos.
Yeah. Or
but
they just might not be to your taste, but they've still
They might have-
passed a security clearance.
Right, right.
Lisa, could we ask Pat Riley to talk?
Yeah, Pat. Pat also served on the board of National Peace Corps Association. And she's currently very involved with Solus Nua, which is involved with contemporary Irish arts. And she's head of the Capital Irish Film Festival, which is starting March 4th through March 14th.
Yeah.
Pat, take it away,
Pat.
Pat.
Well,
Tell
I
us about your experience
that's
in
my
Liberia.
favorite. But you know, really, having been in Liberia and been involved with it ever since, I was in Liberia 72 to 75, and I got, first of all, I got to experience being a white person in a Black country, which is, you know, it's not the same as being a Black person in a white country at all. People thought I could do everything and blah, blah, blah. But I had a lot of difficulty with the principal of my school. It was in a gritty city, not the nice, cute village experience. And, you know, it was a big mining town. And my principal, I just never could feel support from him. I mean, I had my life threatened at times, and I'd go to the principal and he'd be like, deal with it. And I didn't understand it until someone explained to me that he had lived in Washington, D.C. while he was going to school, and that he had experienced racism there, and it left him with a deep, abiding mistrust of people who are white. And it took me many years to process that, but I think it's gotten me ready for the moment in our country when we all have to wake up and understand this. But I've been trying to understand it thanks to him for 40 years. So that was part of my Peace Corps experience. Much of it was lovely and loving. But I also understood something about race that none of my friends did when I got back. So that's my story.
Thanks, Pat. That's great. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. Lisa, who else would we like to hear from?
Let's see who's in the audience. While I'm scrolling through, I'll mention
Patty from Thailand. Was she waving like she wanted to talk?
Patty from Thailand.
Maybe I have the name.
Neil from
Patty
Benin.
from Thailand. There she is, Patty.
Here I am.
Yeah, there you are.
Okay. I was in Thailand early on, 1964 to 1965, 2 years. And the opposite experience that Lisa had, the Thais were always there. I lived in a small wooden house with a couple of the other Thai teachers behind the school. I was teaching English in the high school. And I could never be alone. My students were always there, the other teachers, that when I woke up in the morning and opened up my shutters, they would be there. because they don't want you to feel alone. They thought if I were left alone, I would feel very bad. And they would always say, "Kittung ban Ruka, are you homesick?" They were for 2 years. So we were the first, my colleague Karen, she was in the boys' school. We didn't live together. But wherever we went, we were celebrities. They had never had any Americans living there except for the Seventh-day Adventist missionaries who didn't really mix in very much. But they did have a little hospital, which was handy when we needed some care. And it really struck me how much they identified or wanted to identify with who I was. And we were there when Kennedy was shot. And I heard it lying in my little cot at night on the radio from Malaysia. And the next morning, of course, all the children came from the high school and some of the teachers, and they stood outside my little house and they were all crying. And they thought I would have to leave now. They're used to this sort of thing happening in certain parts of the world where when the leader is taken out, everybody who's with him goes away. So they thought I was going to have to leave.
Right.
So I've heard a lot of things tonight that I could certainly feel a rapport with. The ability it gave me, a young girl just out of college from Virginia, had never really been anywhere. I came home through Europe spending a month on my own. I wanted to do it alone to see how that would be. And I've always been able to leave jobs, good jobs, to take on something else I wanted to do, start a company, run a company for 20 years, a travel company. I helped arrange for our 50th anniversary of our group in Thailand, while the ambassador was one of our group, was in the embassy, Daryl Johnson. So it's opened me up to being able to say, here, let's do this. Let's raise a lot of money for America's homeless. We'll go to craftspeople all over the US and get them to send us their crafts, and we'll put on a big craft sale. And we did that. And I started a film festival for immigration and immigration justice. But that all is because of the experience I had in those early years, in my early 20s, to go to the other side of the world. And we were really away. We did not talk to our parents on the phone or anybody on the phone. We had these little tissue thin letters that you folded up. I don't know whether you've ever seen them, but it's very
Aerograms. They're called
lightweight.
aerograms.
Aerograms, that's right. So you were on the other side of the world, and you were there on the Peace Corps had not even been to our town when they sent us there. We were very fortunate, though. It was Phuket, which is now a world-class resort. But when we were there was one little hotel in town for the Chinese businessmen to stay in. Now they must have, I've been back twice, they must have 250 hotels. So some of the students we had there, and who learned English from us, were able to use it. We were wondering at the time, where are they ever going to be able to use this English they're learning from us? But there was tin mining, there was rubber production. There was no tourism in 1964. So I was very fortunate to be tapped on the shoulder and asked to train for Thailand, although nobody knew how to pronounce it, much less where it was. They called it Thailand. And it was really the other side of the world. Tonight's been very interesting. Thank you, Lisa, and your other organizers. It's been very good for me to hear these stories.
Interesting story you have, Patty. Thank you. Lisa, I just had a thought. It's up to you to decide if we can do this. I see that there are a number of people who are on this call that did not serve in the Peace Corps. And I wonder if there would be one that would like to say something about what they learned tonight that they wouldn't have known.
Right. Yeah, that's a good idea. How about we ask some of the people, maybe there's a Peace Corps parent in the house, like my mom, Barbara.
And there's Elizabeth Peekins, and there's Lisa Kissel and Mark Hansel, and
did my
there's
mom
Barbara.
learn anything? There's my mom, Barbara. Did you learn anything?
Hi, Barbara.
tonight,
Did you
Mommy?
learn anything?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, I'm in awe of all of you. I mean, such adventurous spirits and wanting to and make, you know, the world a better place. And I remember when John Kennedy thought of the Peace Corps and it was instituted, and it was something new and wonderful. And I never dreamt that my daughter would be adventurous enough to go halfway around the world. I remember that the day that she left, I took her to the airport, and you could go right to the gate, and I stood at the window and I cried. I was so nervous and afraid. I knew nothing about Estonia, and you know, it's my baby leaving for this adventure. It's really wonderful that that you can share all the experiences with those of us that have been able to do that. And thank you for representing the U.S. because
and my mom and cousin visited me in Estonia too during my service.
Yes, I did. It was wonderful. Lisa probably had it easier than a lot of you. She had indoor plumbing, and she had a little apartment that was attached to the school. And she, when I went, I was actually younger than Lisa is now. And she told the people that her elderly mother was coming to visit, so she needed a hot water heater for me installed. And they did. I think it was what, 25 gallon? It was real small.
Yeah, I think 30, and I paid for it out of funds I brought in from my adult teaching classes, because they turned off the hot water when the school shut down during almost a month during the winter, during you know, during the winter holiday break. And so yeah, so I had a hot water heater. and they turned it off in summer too, because, you know, who needs heated water when it's 68 degrees outside, meaning your water is like in the 60s too. You know, it was very cold in Estonia all the time. We were cold all the time. And when I was assigned to my place, I said, I need a bathtub and a phone, you know, for security reasons, not because I wanted to chat all the time. Well, that was part of it. But I needed, you know, I wanted it for security, safety reasons. And I didn't think I was asking for much in Estonia. But once I came back to Estonia, and talked to other RPCVs, I realized I was so well matched for Estonia because they kept out, they did not get, you know, into my business like other people, like I met other RPCVs who served in Africa, Latin America, Caribbean. They're like, oh, I would come home and people would be sitting in my living room watching my TV, even eating my food. And I would be like, hell no, I would not even handle that well. And, you know, it was a trade-off, but, you know, I had the alternative of being like kind of ignored and raised as an only child, you know, I was until my mom remarried when I was older, I was used to my privacy and being alone more. So I feel like it was a good match. And Anne pointed out in the chat that, you know, do we wonder, was this a karmic experience for us? Maybe there's someone else that served, you know, here that feels this was karmic, that you went to your country of service. I do. I feel like I feel very Estonian. It's very funny. I complained about it much of the time I was there, but I do feel Estonian now. And
Lisa, I believe
yeah.
your friend Lisa Kissel is
Lisa
on the call.
Kissel.
I don't know if she's still on, but maybe she could speak.
She is Estonian. Yeah.
There's Lisa.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
Lisa. Better.
I'm not Estonian. I'm Finnish.
Oh, right. You're Francis's friend. Good to see you.
Yes, close enough. So,
Yes.
so Francis was asking the question, what have we all learned? And it's been wonderful to listen to all the stories. And I guess one thing that really strikes me is the courage that all of you had when you entered into these assignments and you did not have a choice. You did not know where you were going, and you went halfway around the world. And that relates also in many ways with some personal experience. You know, I went as an exchange student from Finland to the United States when I was 18 years old, and you did not call your parents, and we had aerograms, and you were on your own in a foreign world. So, but that was for education, but you all went for service. And I really admire everybody who volunteered to do that. And so I want to thank you all for doing that. And coming back with the experience that I think everybody had is that the world is small and people are the same everywhere. We have the same concerns and the same desires and the same fears and insecurities and hopes and dreams. And so it changes everybody who has that experience as a at a young age. And in my life, much later on, I ended up working as a consultant in some places that were very foreign to me, and where I experienced the sense of humility coming from, you know, I worked in Albania with very poor people, and you realize you come from a privileged place, but in a way it's an honor to be able to work with another culture, people who don't know you, but they accept you and welcome you and are willing to learn from you. So so it's great. I have one question. What is right now the situation of the Peace Corps? Is the Peace Corps still sending out people out into the world the same as before, or is it different now?
Yeah, I mean, because of COVID, they've all been brought home, you know, for you know, their own health reasons, but they'll be sending them back out, but it will be an enormous undertaking to get them back. So
I will throw my voice in and say that they are recruiting for Peace Corps response now. And because those are kind of more controllable chunks of time, 6 months to 12 months, and they're more targeted positions. It's kind of a newish program. And I've been seeing things come across for their the recruitment date by like May, June, and the posting date, you know, sometime in the fall. You know, that's the projection, depending upon what happens. So So I know that that's going on. I was looking at a posting in Costa Rica that looked kind of interesting. But I got to sign off. But I just wanted to say thank you, Lisa, and
Thank you,
also
Anne.
Francis. And I
Muchas
also just want to
gracias.
say
Thanks, Anna.
one other epiphany that I think I've had, and I had this at Peace Corps Connect in Austin 2 summers ago. So it was many years after coming back. It was my first Peace Corps Connect, and I was around a cocktail table with a few other volunteers, complete strangers, and we're having these conversations like we're having tonight that like you just don't have with people right normally, right? And it struck me, you know, because I had asked myself, why did I do Peace Corps? Why did I do Peace Corps? It was so hard. I wanted to come home every single day. Um, and I realized, I said, this is why I did Peace Corps, to be part of a group of people that has had these kinds of experiences and to feel connected to something bigger than me. So I just anyway, so it's just I just feel that feeling tonight about being around the people that just so
Right.
inspire me. So
Yeah, our Peace Corps community really is such a gift, and yeah, it really is wonderful to have all the friends we have, you know, who've shared the experience.
we're not even friends; they're just people
You know,
like you
just the
bump into.
connections. Yeah, just the
Instantaneous
whole
connection.
network. It's a huge network. I wanted to just while Lisa is on the phone, I just wanted to mention a kind of epiphany I had when I was visiting my friend in Finland. Finland was only a 90-minute boat ride away from Estonia. So, you know, we were the only Peace Corps volunteers in the world who could go spend the day in Helsinki, my God. And, and I remember sitting in my friend's kitchen and saying to my friend, Jana Kiuru, I said to her, you guys are basically the same as Swedes. And she said, what? We're more like Russians. And I said, no, are you crazy? You know? So it was kind of funny. And then I had to like work in my brain, like, I thought they were all like basically Scandinavian. They're not Scandinavian, they're Nordic, but they're under that Nordic umbrella. And Estonians are now getting under that Nordic umbrella. But she
Lisa,
explained
didn't
to
the
me,
CIA teach you that?
no, but it was just, do you consider, Lisa, do you consider yourself more like a Swede or like a Russian?
Oh, neither, heavens, please.
Neither.
No.
Having
American.
Having said before that people are all the same, and I really do believe that fundamentally, I think we have more in common with each other. But I think we are all very proud of our different cultures, our different origins, and our customs. And but one of the things that something like the Peace Corps does, it helps you realize that in spite of the differences, we have the commonalities. And, you know, much as the Finns don't get along with the Swedes, and the Swedes look down on the Finns, and it's all silliness. It's a whole bunch of silliness. And,
right.
and when you go from the US to the Philippines or to Benin, or, you know, you're very different. And fundamentally, you are actually,
right.
We're all the human race. So I think that's one of the main experiences, or what we all learn when we have that experience, whether it's as an exchange student or as a Peace Corps volunteer, that you respect everyone in the world as a human being, in spite of the differences.
Right, and that's the most important thing, you know, it's yeah, we're all human, and you know, and that's the beauty of our Peace Corps experience, of learning that we're all the same, really, underneath it all, underneath the shallow layers of, like she said, the Swedes change their curtains every season, which they think is crazy, you know, but you know, it's funny because the Finno-Ugric people, which Estonia and Finland are Finno-Ugric people, and they are, their language is similar to the grammar of Korean. So it's very serendipitous that we have a Korean host that I became a good friend with Francis 20 years ago. Yeah, so and they have the sauna tradition too. All the northern cultures have that sauna tradition because you've got to keep warm.
And so do the Koreans. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I have a question.
With your friends.
I have a question.
Yes, who is that?
I'm Carl Kosak, and I was not in the Peace Corps, but I was in a traveling Quaker college and lived and studied all over the world and had a lot of the same experiences. And my wife and I have been very involved with a wonderful host travel organization called Servos.
I know Servos.
And I just wonder, what is Peace Corps response? I've heard it referred to several times. I really don't know what it is.
Is there anyone on the call who did Peace Corps response that's still here? I think T. Fox had to sign off.
Pat Riley, do you know?
Pat, do you know?
Lisa, I can talk about it.
Terry served in Honduras. She's on our board of directors. And she's our featured SSTCI star of March newsletter.
So, yeah, Peace Corps response it's a short-term deployment of people who have technical skills as they are needed. Let me see, Lisa, if I can do that. Anyway, so for instance, if they need a civil engineer or tourism, actually, that's one of the things that they recruit people who could help develop tourism in Vietnam was one of the things they were doing. So they're basically short-term, 6 months. They can be renewed. And they're just sent for a specific project. It's not like Peace Corps, which is really more of a development organization, not just a quick fix. So,
and are they always people who served in the Peace Corps before? Or
no, but they do generally they give priority to return Peace Corps volunteers. But
that's news to me.
It's not a requirement. It's not a requirement.
No, it is not a requirement.
Wow.
And Anna, somebody has put the list of open positions here in the chat, so you can get an idea of what they're looking for. Literacy is a big one. They send literacy specialists, community health people. Depending on what the country has asked for, they try to match it with skills. They look for more experienced people than the average.
More technical. Peace Corps.
Yeah, and apparently an expertise that they haven't been able to get in country. You know, that's so. Yeah, I was looking at a position in Costa Rica recently for organizational, what I do for a living, which is organizational management. You know, and I was like, that looks interesting, but I didn't pull the trigger on that one yet. But
well, it's sometimes hard to leave your work for 6 months. I mean, it depends on what kind of work you do. If you have contract work in general, you can do it, but
yeah,
but it can be hard.
Or you have to be over 75, like some of us are.
Well, health gets in the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, health. Then you got health. Yeah.
Yeah, and you should go.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Corps. You should go to the Peace Corps response opportunity.
Oh, you should. Oh, I should. Oh, I was like, okay.
Not off the call, but.
Oh, okay. Well, no, I'm thinking about it. I want to go across the country right now. I don't want to get on an airplane.
I know you have big plans, so
Yeah,
but if you go somewhere cool, and once COVID is over, I'm gonna visit you.
Please
well,
do.
Also, there's another point. I don't know that I didn't hear, but I came in later. Whether anyone brought this up, but Peace Corps is mandate is to provide service globally. There's no provision for Peace Corps volunteers to volunteer domestically. So when they brought home all the volunteers about a year ago, it was first the Chinese volunteers, and that was more political, I think, in January. But then in March, all volunteers globally were brought back. People said, why not just, deploy them to work with COVID. At that point, it was contact tracing in particular, and they're not allowed to. They're just not. They're just simply not allowed to deploy domestically, but they can work with other groups such as it used to be called Action. I forget what it's called. Well, the umbrella organization, and they did. That's exactly what happened. So the volunteers.
AmeriCorps.
What?
AmeriCorps.
AmeriCorps, yeah. And the volunteers that were brought back were given priority with AmeriCorps, and a lot of them did. I mean, Peace Corps. A third of Peace Corps volunteers last year were in the health sector. And then if you add the engineering and community development, all that, that's a lot of the things that Peace Corps volunteers do would be applicable to the COVID response. And so, but they can't do it through Peace Corps. But so they went through AmeriCorps, which was always a sister or brother organization. So, and yeah, and actually they're talking about deploying soon to the Caribbean and Vietnam. So
Terry is a civil rights attorney, federal civil rights attorney, and on our board of directors here, served in Honduras. But you stay, I guess you stay very abreast of what's going on with Peace Corps. Do you know what the plan is for getting?
They don't even have a director yet.
They don't have a director yet. They don't have it. Yeah, I know. This is an interim. I mean, I guess until COVID is over with, they're not going to replace people.
Right, they're not going to send volunteers. Well, until it's safe. I mean, so some people are getting vaccinated, but most people who are getting vaccinated are either over 65 or have underlying medical conditions, so they're not going to be Peace Corps volunteers. But maybe by the end of the summer, if younger volunteers or younger people are healthy younger people are vaccinated, they'll be able to go abroad. But we don't know how long the vaccines will last, and you don't want someone to go someplace and they have to come back 6 months later because they don't have vaccines.
Can I just say it's a huge logistical problem to get the Peace Corps stood up again. It's going to be very expensive. And that's why I'm saying in the chat box, keep an eye on this. The government, there are going to be people who don't want to see the Peace Corps funded to that extent. We've never needed much money.
Yeah, one thing that's really interesting is that until 4 years ago, Peace Corps got widespread bipartisan support. We used to go lobby on the Hill, and we had a lot of Republican support. It was very strong report. And then all of a sudden, in the last 4 years, they really want to abolish it. I'm not sure that's what this administration wants to do, but they're going to have to start from square one. And also, Peace Corps is reflecting on what it hasn't been as inclusive as it could be. That's for sure. And there were a lot of discussions last summer in particular about what the new Peace Corps would be like. And they're starting with a clean slate. So it's going to take time, it's going to take money, but it's our place in the world. We need, there's no question that Peace Corps serves the American interest in terms of business, in terms of diplomacy. I mean, it's critical, but it's going to have to start from square one.
Yeah, sending Peace Corps volunteers into the field is much more cost effective than sending in diplomats.
It's the best bang for the buck in the U.S. government.
Or the military, and it's better than military too.
Far more.
You can avoid the military.
Well, they used to say
Anne
that
says I can see Peace Corps being completely in Biden's wheelhouse. It's just such a small crumb of the budget. It is such a small crumb of the budget. It has enjoyed bipartisan support all these years, but and it's I would say it hasn't really been. It wasn't really on Obama's and Biden's daily radar, I would say.
That's right.
You know, we continued, but they could have given more.
Right.
I'm just not optimistic about, you know, any more investment than what we've had, you know, any increases anytime soon. I mean, especially with COVID and resources need to be directed elsewhere. But, you know, it gives you more bang for the buck, and Peace Corps, our RPCVs come back and, you know, transform our country in so many positive ways. You
Well,
know,
as far as I know, they're still planning on doing the 60th anniversary celebration, and that was slated for Howard University, which is actually where they had, I think, the 20th anniversary celebration was on the Howard campus.
Yes.
Howard's
No.
at HBCU. So yeah,
It's all
Jesse,
gonna be
it's still on, isn't it? As far as I know.
It's going to be virtual.
They've already changed.
everything is virtual for the next several months at least.
But
At
this
least
was
through
going to be
midsummer.
later. When I talked to Glenn, I thought he thought they were going to still do it.
NPCA, that's what they've told the Friends of Liberia. We had all kinds of things planned, and they told
Okay.
us it's all going to be virtual. The Howard University, wonderful idea, done. It's going to go online, and
Okay.
that's not going to be the same. So,
Well, it's not the same, but we were supposed to have a Peace Corps Honduras reunion August 2020, and obviously we couldn't do it, but we did a full day, more than a full day, virtual reunion, and people felt it wasn't the same, but they were really happy to be able to get together. And there were a lot of people so that they would not have been able to go to California. We had people from all over the world who were able to join us, and it was more than 12 hours. We started at noon and we finished after midnight. And actually I was shutting it down. I didn't realize there were some people in a breakout room, and they didn't they didn't want, they were just caught up with each other and chatting. I said, okay, you know, it doesn't cost me anything. I'll just let it keep it open. So I don't really know what time they left. I just kept it open all night, but
like any good party.
Yeah.
We are going on 2.5 hours, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's been such an interesting discussion. You know, RPCVs can talk Peace Corps for hours on end, so we should probably wrap up with any final comments,
I
thoughts.
think it's been so much fun.
It
Thank
has
you
been.
for putting this together, Lisa.
Thank
you so much, Francis, for
Oh, I'm so
facilitating. And
happy to have been able to do this. And hearing everybody's story is just such a treat. So thank you.
thank
Can I
you
just
to
say
all
one
of
thing?
our thank you to all our panelists also who shared their stories. Who was it that wanted to make a quick final comment?
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Yes, who was that?
I'm Ali Khan. I was in Benin in 76, 77. So I just wanted to let you know really quickly, you probably do know about the Museum of the Peace Corps experience and AU Museum exhibit, virtual exhibit opening on Wednesday evening. So if you go to the Museum of the Peace Corps exhibit website, you can register and see the virtual exhibit. The exhibit is actually mounted, and it will be up into early April, but you know, the campus is closed. So, you know, hopefully sometime in the summer we can get to see it, but it's really a wonderful exhibit. And also you should all know about the oral history project that's done out of the University of Kentucky, and also the Many Faces initiative. So for volunteers of color, non-white volunteers who have stories to tell, it's a really important project. So
Yeah,
there's
I remember Bob, who started the history project, and he interviewed me. So I think my recording is at the JFK Library in Boston, if I'm not mistaken. And then they were transferred to AU.
Well,
Where did you?
The JFK Library is only collecting stories from volunteers who were serving during Kennedy's administration. So this other project is broad, you know, it's for everybody else since out of the University of Kentucky. So
where did you serve, Allie?
Benin and Benin.
Benin. Okay,
Pat
great.
and Leslie.
There were a lot of
There are a
Benin
lot of Benin
volunteers. Great. So
Yeah.
great to have you guys. Thank you so much to all of our participants, all of our you know, panelists, and to Francis, Korea volunteer, Holiday Alford, who hosted our event, and to all of our panelists serving across the globe. I hope you continue celebrating Peace Corps Week and Peace Corps 60th anniversary with us the rest of the year. So many events going on. We could talk forever, huh?
It looks like Ken wanted to say something
Oh,
here.
Ken has a comment. Let me guess, is it about music, Ken? You gotta unmute.
Not entirely. I just want to say you guys all have really fascinating stories. I was really impressed that several of you have were dealing with environmental issues. I do not think in any way, shape, or form I could be as self-reliant as you all were, having to deal with a lot of adverse circumstances. And I know we don't have time to answer questions like this. Yes, I do want to know how many of you went to music events. I am a music journalist, but
I answered you in the chat.
We all did, Ken.
I also want to know if you had to, if part of the Peace Corps thing, and I am no expert, I do not know, did you feel in any way, shape, or form that you were required to promote or endorse conventional American political attitudes or
No,
the economic system?
Nope.
the economic system, not at all.
Never happened.
No.
You didn't have to say, I
No.
love the American way of life or some, you know, something like that.
I mean, of course, as an American, I mean, I'm very critical and I've always been a protester on my own, but when you're out of your country and you face criticism, you tend to defend it. But no, we never had any kind of pressure like that at all. They don't want, they want us to be natural and just to be ourselves, and we were never given any guidance like that. So we were who we were, you know, and we spoke freely, sometimes criticizing our own country.
I would
But
love to meet all you guys in person. You really have incredible stories.
Yeah, I think you would have loved Peace Corps service, Ken.
If I was in an urban area like you are, I could not be as
In a
self-reliant
rural-
as these people in the very, I couldn't.
Right. I'm thankful that I was placed close to the capital. You know, I don't think I could have survived. You know, I was in Europe, in a more developed country. It had its own challenges being newly independent from the USSR, and because of the climate, it had
You
those
have great music
challenges.
there though, Lisa. That they do. Yes.
They are gifted in music. Yes.
Rat
Estonians are
attack.
gifted. Right. In folk music as well as classical and folk and everything. I feel very fortunate to have been assigned to Estonia. It was such a good match for me. And like, as Anne pointed out in the chat, she asked, does anyone ever wonder if it was a karmic thing that we went to our countries that we went to? And I think I was already kind of Estonian without knowing it before going there. I
That's
was
kinda how I feel.
already kind of drawn to Northern Europe because I had already lived in Sweden. So I'd already lived on the Baltic Sea, and the Swedes, the Vikings had already been in Estonia. So they have some of the cultural kind of feel in Estonia. So it felt like home once I went. It wasn't that much of a shock. It was enough of a shock though. But thank you to Jesse, who just was here. He served in Morocco. He didn't want to comment, but I know he had an interesting experience in Morocco and served on RPCVW's board for a long time.
going back to Ken's
Yeah.
point, Lisa, one thing
Very.
I remember for the
Yeah.
around the 50th anniversary, there's a lot of publicity. And a friend of mine who's not very culturally sensitive in my view, asked, well, if the Peace Corps has been so successful, why does it still exist after 50 years? And I said, well, my response was, because it is so successful. Yes, volunteers aren't for the most part digging wells and the really basic things. Some of them are, but most of what it is the soft diplomacy and work and develop. I mean, the needs have changed, but there's still great need, and there will be for generation after generation. But they talk about how there's several world leaders who refer to and thank their Peace Corps volunteer, the volunteer who was in their village. They really felt that was critical to their growth and development and success later on. You know, so there, to me, there will always be a need for it. And I'm hoping that the little bit of funding that it needs will be there. I wouldn't be surprised if Peace Corps actually goes out and, well, they do have a development officer, so they may be going the way of AmeriCorps and trying to get private funding too. I don't know. But
Great, Jay, you came back.
I have a couple of comments. Real
Yeah,
quick.
tell us.
The question of, were we instructed to be a certain way politically? Absolutely not. In 1967, a whole bunch of our volunteers from Brazil signed a letter to the Secretary of State saying that we didn't belong in Vietnam. It was hurting our presence, and we did not suffer any consequences, although a group of volunteers from Chile did the same thing, and they were all dismissed, I understand. And my second point is, I owe my career to the Peace Corps. I was in Cleveland 2 years after the Peace Corps doing community development work for the city. Peace Corps sent a list of ex-volunteers to the UN agency looking for an information officer. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization was looking for an information officer. Because Peace Corps sent my name to the UN, I got the job, and I wound up for 17 years doing all kinds of good stuff, like talking on CNN about the African famine and going around to universities, et cetera, et cetera. So 17 years worth of my work was all owed to the Peace Corps.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Terrific, Jay. You're one of my favorite RPCVs. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jay is like one of the coolest guys you could really know. I don't know if it's because he served in Brazil or because he was already cool and he just happened to be sent to Brazil. And Jay and Sharon are both really awesome people, and they live in Tacoma Park. Wonderful folks.
We live in Tacoma Park.
Yeah, and I know them through. I mentioned in the chat, I know them through Partners of the Americas, which is another organization created by John F. Kennedy, and Partners of the Americas, it works to connect people across the hemisphere and doing development work also. So the DC chapter Partners was partnered with Brasilia, which Rhett is down in Brasilia right now, and he had to sign off a little while ago. But yeah, so Brazil was my kind of antidote to Estonia. Yeah, so, but it's been such a great discussion. We could talk forever about, about our Peace Corps experience and life in other cultures and how it transformed our lives. But we only have so much time. It's already after 10 o'clock. We started at 7:30. Thank you to all of our
Thank you,
panelists.
Lisa.
Thank you to Francis Holiday Alford.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
For being our host. And to all of our wonderful panelists representing all corners of the Peace Corps world.